Welcome to the Philip Wylie Show. Take a look behind the curtain of professional hacking and hear compelling discussions with guests from diverse backgrounds who share a common curiosity and passion for challenges and their job. And now, here's your host, offensive security professional, educator, mentor, and author, Philip Wylie.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Philip Wylie Show. Today I'm very excited to have Bat joining me. Bat is using a pseudonym or hacker name, however you want to phrase it, but like some security folks, they really try to protect their OPSEC, and they're trying to do that just to kind of maintain some anonymity, which I respect and appreciate that they're able to take the time out, because sometimes people with that kind of OPSEC don't take time to do podcasts and stuff. So I appreciate you joining.
Yeah, absolutely glad to be here. I was a little nervous at first, even about joining. I'm very adverse to, recordings, cameras, anything anti-privacy. I'm very privacy-focused type of person, so it makes me nervous to be on cameras and see like any sort of recording software or hardware in any capacity. So I'm glad to be here. I'm just getting through my nerves.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. And if you wouldn't mind sharing your hacker origin story.
Absolutely. So I started with computers when I was a little kid, mostly because my oldest sister was already into computers. There's like a 6-ish year gap between us. So she was like my mentor kind of as I was a little kid. She helped me build my first computer out of like all the spare parts that we had in the garage. And then I'd say like the hacker origin story kind of starts when she was showing me how I could get into the laptop, like our family laptop, that there was, I think it was Windows 7 that it was running at the time. It was either Windows 7 or Windows XP. It was an old NT version, but you could replace like the accessibility icon before you log in with a command prompt. And then if you click on accessibility, it would launch it as root or as admin. So I would just go in and change like the admin password or just remove it entirely. And then I could like access my mom's account to go, open a browser and go play around on browser games. So that kind of got my interest sparked in computers. And then a lot of it through like middle school and high school was really focused in on just, I like video games. I think this is cool. Let me like learn a few things about computers because I'm like, I'm realistically going to go into IT, so I may as well spend some time around them. So it wasn't a lot of hacking at that point. I remember that like I learned some of the rudimentary tools like Cain and Abel. We would use that to we would watch my dad put in the Wi-Fi password just because it's over HTTP. So we were using Cain and Abel to pull the credentials because we didn't know how like a web stack works. All we know is this magic tool gives us the password to the Wi-Fi router so we can go in and remove the quality of service or the QoS at the time from like our devices because he would like throttle them so that we have super slow speeds but he's got fast speeds. So we just remove all those settings and then log out. And he didn't find out till we were, adults at that point. But those kind of things kind of got my interest sparked into computers. And then over time, when it like became the end of high school and that's like, okay, what am I doing next with my life? I wanted to go to college. So I just kind of like threw a pin at a map and said, I'm going to apply there and I'm going to go there. I got in. I went to a private college for a bachelor's degree in network security and a bachelor's degree in digital forensics. I completed those when I was 19, and that's actually when you and I spoke when I was like 17 or 18, just kind of first getting my feet wet into security. And then after college finished, I immediately went into the workforce. I got picked up by an MSSP, and I started as a SOC analyst or a security operations analyst doing, essentially grunt work, for lack of better terminology. It's very much just ticket munching at that point of, is this true positive? Is this false positive? Let me build a small analysis of what it is, ship it off to customers. And then I stayed in their SOC for about a year before I was promoted into a threat hunting position within the same company. So I did threat hunting for them for about 6 months or so. And at that point, I was poached by another company, which is my current company, who I've been with for, I want to say like 3 years or so at this point. I've done about 2 years of work for them doing insider threat analysis, detection, response, the whole IR in a box specific to insiders as a threat vector. And then the last year of work or so, I've done as general threat hunting for them because there's a whole debacle when they kind of move people around. So I've been back to threat hunting at this point, but I really enjoy the forensic aspect that I got to do for a really long time with them. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah, I guess that's kind of my history in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's really cool story, and I really like that, your hacker origin story contains some hacking as a kid, so it's kind of interesting because 'cause I've have guests on that they hack video games to be able to get certain things out of it and, more plays or whatever instead of they losing lives and stuff and things like that, but it's pretty interesting to see that you hear some people hacking the grading systems at their high school or whatever, but that's really kinda cool that you're hacking stuff at home, and it's kinda interesting that your sister was interested in that too.
Yeah, yeah, she's still in IT today. She just more likes the hardware side of things, and I really enjoy software. So we kind of split off on our interests in computers sometime around college when I was like trying to figure out what I liked about security. But it's really awesome that was like the direction that I ended up going. I did do the same stuff that some of those other people did, not like proper game hacking where it's legitimate, but it was more so, I was a little kid at some point and I would be Googling like Star Wars The Old Republic key generator download exe, and then I'd download a bunch of garbage to our my mom's school computer and all that. But I got wiser about it eventually.
Oh, very cool. So, yeah, I'd like for you to kinda share because, whenever we met, you interviewed me for a school project, so if you wouldn't mind kinda sharing kinda what your career path was then because you're on a different career path than what you ended up in.
Yeah, so when I first interviewed you, it was for one of those projects in college that's like to get your feet wet in the industry, you should go out and like find someone who's doing what you want to be doing and ask them, how, like, what do they do? How do they do it? And how do you get into that space? So at the time when I was like I'd say sophomore, junior-ish, it was really small time frame. So like middle-ish of my college career or collegiate, whatever you call it, middle-ish in there, I had wanted to be a pen tester because I'm seeing the same shiny things everyone else is that, oh, this is so cool that you can like just kind of like get into devices. That's neat. I haven't like conceptualized that before. It's like so shiny. So I wanted to do pen testing originally without any inkling of an idea that maybe pen testing wasn't for me, or that it has a lot more than just like generalized pen testing. Like there's so many like what's the word that I'm looking for? Not
Yeah,
verticals. Yeah.
yeah,
There's
different areas or disciplines of pen
yeah,
testing.
disciplines of pen
Yeah,
testing. So I didn't even have an inkling of idea of that, but I was like, let me go interview somebody. So I actually heard about you through a friend at the time. He was like, this guy would be really cool to interview. Here's a Pwn School shirt. And I actually still have that in my closet today.
cool.
Yeah, it's a little weathered, but it's still there. But he was like, this guy would be a really cool interview for you since you want to learn about pen testing. So I had reached out to you and I had a set prepared questions. They weren't great for sure. I'm sure I could dig them up and kind of cringe at the lack of understanding experience that I had at the time. But it was just generally, what's your day to day look like? How do I get to be to your level? And then as I progressed in through college, and then especially once I got into the workforce, I really realized that pen testing just simply was not for me. I find it fun time to time to like, sit down and tear a specific technology apart and figure out how it works. But I don't really have that like that dopamine hit that you usually do, when you're actually popping shells. I go, oh, finally, I can stop crying about how much broke along the way. I enjoy the frustration of a challenge, but it doesn't feel like the pen testing challenges are really like fulfilling to me.
Well, that's great that you followed your passion and found something you're interested in. And one of the reasons I'm really glad, during this discussion is for anyone that's wanting to break into security or pivot to other areas in security that they're hearing that there's other things besides pen testing, which is great if that's what people want to do. But like yourself, you got exposure to other things and found out what you really wanted to do. And so many cases these days, the only thing people know about is pen testing, especially if you watch movies. You really don't see much defense or whatever. It's always hacker oriented. So it's good to have someone sharing their story and kind of good to see that you went that way. Because I have a similar story of someone that I worked with that when I used to work at a bank as a pen tester, had someone on the team. that started on the help desk. They were taking digital forensics courses through the SANS Institute. They were taking all these courses and they finally thought, I'm going to take a pen testing course because maybe that'll help me be better at digital forensics. He took the pen testing course, fell in love with pen testing, and then moved into that area. So otherwise, if he hadn't tried other things, he might have been in digital forensics and not liked it. So you never can tell. So it's good when people explore other opportunities, even if that's something you're really set your mind on. I think it's good to check out other things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's always good to kind of talk to, people that might be doing things that are still cyber related, but are definitely, not pen testing. I think pen testing gets the most attention because it's cool and it's flashy and, it's super cool that like this is how they're visualizing it in movies. And that must mean that hacking's a lot of fun and it's cool, but it's like most of hacking is a lot of reading code and troubleshooting code and making exploit scripts and going, why isn't this working? And what am I missing? And banging your head against a wall for a really long time on one specific bit. Um, but I found my way into forensics mostly because I also picked it as a discipline for my college or my bachelor's degree. So I started getting a little bit of exposure through the courses that we had there, but it didn't feel like it was giving me enough. And that was a great direction for me. Or like a kind of a tip off that maybe this is a better direction for me than pen testing because there's tons of like courses that we had around like the basics of pen testing and networking and all the fundamentals that you need, but they didn't really like give me that like itch to just keep learning more. But then I started feeling that as I was going through like my intro to forensic courses. I was like, this is actually like super interesting and incredibly captivating to me that I could just learn all these things about operating systems for free. It just it's all out there. Like you just read code and you understand how the thing works, and then you write down notes and go, okay, this is what I'm going to need for these types of investigations, and it snowballs. Yeah, I really like forensics and the direction that I went.
Very cool. And for anyone listening, my opinion, digital forensics and pen testing are two of the hardest disciplines within cybersecurity. There could be others that are, like malware reverse engineering or malware analysis could be difficult. But one of the things just to note is Bat wasn't taking the easy way out. She moved into something that could be as difficult, sometimes more difficult than doing a pen test. So that's good to see that you embrace the challenge to learn something opposed to trying to find something easy, that you found something that you like the challenge and you've worked towards that.
Absolutely. I want to be able to feel fulfilled at my day job. Every time that I wake up and I'm going to go sit at my desk for 10 hours in a day, I want to spend that time feeling like I'm, having fun. Obviously, there's always, some sort of boring work to get done, but when it's focused on the discipline that you're actually interested in, that 10 hours quickly starts to become like it'll feel like 2 hours. And then all of a sudden my day is gone and I spent the whole day looking at how like this specific process works and how it interacts with everything else. And that was it. That's all I accomplished today. But it was a lot of fun because I learned something.
Very cool. So if you wouldn't mind sharing what your typical day looks like, the type of work you do.
So currently my day-to-day is it changes every single day. Primarily the focus is on threat hunting and detection engineering. So a lot of my work revolves around I do research into a hypothesis that I have of, I believe that this behavior works in this specific way. I need to prove it in some way or another. So I'll build out the research for that hypothesis, followed by because I work in an enterprise environment, the majority of my work tends to like the output of it will be SIM queries, or we're specifically looking for across all of our data sets in our entire environment. Do we have this specific behavior based on my hypothesis and research? Can I prove that this is or is not happening? And then based on the fidelity of those queries, I like at the end of all of my research, I built these refined queries of how to pull this information back from our data lake. If this is a high enough fidelity where we have like, one event coming back rather than 10,000, if it's high fidelity, then that just quickly gets transitioned into a detection engineering role. That way, if that ever like if that specific activity ever occurs again, then that generates an alert for our SOC analyst to triage, and then it's just rinse and repeat as we go. The day-to-day is very chaotic in that some days it's very hunting focused, other days it's being pulled into incident bridges because you need more like all hands on deck. We have some incident going on inside incident or in the incident response side of things, and they just need extra hands. Other days I get to actually spend my whole day hunting. Typically those hunts, you could consider them to be more campaigns than kind of like a day long session. It's just I kind of chip away at the work over a week or 2 weeks. That way it's just I'm continuing to do the research and I'm not trying to rush my way through something that I have some understanding of, but not a complete picture. And then once I feel that I have the complete pictures, when I finally set it down, submit it, say I'm done. Here's, proof of all the work that I did, and here's the all of my outcomes. Here's my true positive events. Here's my false positives and why I cleaned them all out. Just kind of at the end, it feels like threat hunting is a like 90% documentation of niche behaviors and about 10% of, finding malicious activity in your network.
Yeah, it sounds like an interesting role because when I first heard of threat hunting, it sounded like something that would be fun to do.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. I think some threat hunter are a lot easier than others, specifically because we're looking at things like anomaly-based detections versus specific behaviors. So I like looking for behaviors, or they typically call them like TTP hunts, because we're basing a lot of our work off of how we can map it over to MITRE. That way our incident response team and all of our, management is very happy that we have MITRE coverage. So we use the MITRE attack framework to say that we're looking for like this specific behavior type, and then we'll build a hunt around based on like or this behavior. What could we possibly like use at a log standpoint to prove whether this is or is not happening? And a lot of that tends to uncover that nobody has 100% visibility into their logs. No matter how confident you are, there's always some sort of gap somewhere where you're just simply not logging these things from these hosts or this group or this technology for, so many years prior. And then it tends to be a lot of uncovering skeletons in the closet of, oh, we never realized that we had these weird shadow IT processes. Yes, they're fine. They're legitimate. We have proof of that, but they've been ongoing for years, and they could have been exploited at any point. And then there's others like I really like memory forensics, so hunting specifically for patterns within memory is very interesting to me. But considering it's just you can't always just have like a point in time snapshot of everybody's machines at every given moment. So a lot of it tends to be we have to be very careful about doing in-memory hunts, because it like has to be a script that we deploy to every workstation and server across our fleets, where we'll like set up like a Yara rule of these are the specific like byte strings, for example, is a simple way to be looking in memory is, do we have any devices with this exact string sitting somewhere in memory? Because if so, then that's a great indication that we have, a bad actor in our network.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So, are you leveraging any kind of AI in that role? Because I know AI is starting to become widely used in a lot of areas. Are you able to leverage that, or using anything like AI?
So we have a little bit for the threat hunting side of it. It's almost entirely human driven. I know our management wants to quickly move that along so that it would be human assisted, but primarily AI doing the work. Um, but as it stands right now, the only AI that I get to use in my work is essentially just dumping CSVs over into a local LLM and telling it to do some data analysis and give me like counts of this or sort this data or that kind of thing. So it's helpful for automating my boring tasks, but when it's coming to like the actual hunting itself, that's entirely human driven at this point.
That's good because it's kind of the boring stuff that you want to automate and work on the fun stuff because it's kind of amazing some of the things you can do. I do a follow Friday on X, formerly Twitter, and someone had mentioned recently, yeah, you got some duplicates in your follow Friday. And I've got like probably 9 or 10 different posts under one thread for my follow Friday. And I was using Chat GPT and asked it to remove the duplicates. And otherwise, it makes it a little more difficult, even when you're using tools like Sublime and some of the other editors that have a lot of nice capabilities, search and replace features. Chat GPT made it even easier than trying to use some of those tools.
Yeah, I really like it for, as you said, automating the boring tasks. Anything that I can use to avoid touching Excel, I would I'm always for.
So yeah, so as far as like the role you're in now, the thread hunting, is there any special training that you had for that, or is this all just hands-on experience?
This is all hands-on experience. I think the only reason I was moved into threat hunting role rather than into the incident response side of things is because of the people that I was on for the previous team. I was the only one that had any experience on my resume specifically outlining that I did hunting previously. So based on the 6 months of threat hunting experience I had prior, they moved me into this role. So cumulatively, I've got like a year and a half under my.
That's great. So if someone wants to get into threat hunting, how would you recommend them prepare for a role in threat hunting?
So I think having experience in the incident response track is the most important over any other types of roles. I think it's most important that you understand how to take your data, like take all of your disparate data, put it in one place, and then build a storyline based on it. I think it's incredibly important to be able to kind of like build that narrative and then use all of the evidence that you're collecting over time to support that narrative. That way you can like I'd say logs in general are just going to kind of be garbage data if you're trying to put that in front of like C-suite and say, look, here's the proof that, somebody exfiltrated 50 gig worth of PHI and they shipped it out the door. They don't care about the actual data that you're giving them whatsoever. They want to know in layman's terms what's going on. So being able to translate just raw dumps of logs into an exact storyline of at this time this user logged in, at this time they accessed like their browser and they made these queries implying that they're looking to do some sort of enumeration against the network followed by executions of these tools implying that they did enumerate the network. And being able to kind of like build out that timeline and then regurgitate that as a narrative, I think is an invaluable tool as a threat hunter, which I mean, I'm biased in my experience because I went the IR track, but I got that experience of how to like take that just disparate data and build that into narratives from doing SOC work and working on an incident response team.
So I know you have a degree and some certs. So is it required, or do you recommend someone have a degree to get into this type of role?
So I think everybody's path is different for sure. Typically, I'll recommend the triad, sorry, where you pick two of the three of education, experience, and certifications. If you have two of the three, then you're in a pretty good spot to start anywhere in blue team simply because a perfect candidate would have all three. But if you're trying to start, you want two of the three to get pretty much anywhere. Then again, I know people that have none of the above that made it in anyway. So I think a lot of it is being able to talk through generally like the technical understandings of technology rather than like leaning on tools. Because like a common pitfall I've seen when like interviewing future SOC analysts for roles within our company, the most common pitfall is they know all of the keywords, they know all of like the CompTIA kind of buzzwords and how to phrase this and how to like they know where to insert words and tooling into their sentences when they're like trying to explain their experience. But when you ask them questions that are like specifically prefaced with let's not talk about tools, okay, let's take all of your tool sprawl away from you, how do you handle an incident on a laptop with absolutely no enterprise tools whatsoever, because you will always run into an incident where this laptop's not set up perfectly. It doesn't have all the tools that you expect. If something can fail, it's going to fail. So how do you navigate the actual investigation of this device without the tools telling you what to do? And I find that that's like the biggest pitfall of all of these analysts is that's where they falter, because they're so used to using the outputs from their tools. They're expecting that they have a working tool that's going to tell them the process trees and how this process spawned this one and why this one like exited before this one, what these process command lines mean, that kind of thing. So when I bring them into like, let's talk about like, a tabletop scenario, let's walk through this hypothetical of you have none of your enterprise tools in front of you. How are you going to navigate this? They always just kind of find themselves in a pitfall there of just they don't know how to respond. They're not used to like the actual artifacts that you need for your actual investigation. So yeah, long story short, that's kind of where I think you kind of stand out from the crowd when you're trying to do defensive security if you actually fundamentally understand the underlying technologies.
So do you feel like certifications are helpful?
I feel like they're helpful in certain scenarios. Like certification training is definitely helpful simply because if you're not familiar with the area, it's a fantastic way to get a crash course without falling off the bandwagon, like going down some rabbit hole that has nothing to do with it. Good example, I recently got my GREM or my GIAC engineering malware certification. I don't have like practical experience in reverse engineering. I just went, this looks like a challenge. This will be fun. I want that course specifically. So I spent a week physically in a classroom for SANS, and then I scheduled the cert like a month later, did some self study, and then passed actually last month, I think it was. But like I didn't have any reverse engineering experience prior to that. I just thought that it would be interesting. I like malware. I think it's cool. I want to learn more about it. So I went that direction simply to pick up a new skill. But if I were to say, like, I don't want to just kind of say, yes, certs as a blanket are a great direction to use, specifically because it depends on the job role that you're looking for and what you're trying to get out of it. Like, Security Plus is always a great one for resume fodder, especially if you're like entry level in blue team. But it doesn't actually cover the fundamentals that you need to be successful in that job. So if you want it to be a good resume piece, or if you're looking to learn a specific technology or like one specific area, I think they're great. But I don't like that a lot of the InfoSec community will, I don't want to generalize and say a lot. I would say like more LinkedIn influencers will be like, here's the top 10 certifications that you're going to need to get into an entry level SOC position. Once you have these covered, you're good, guaranteed job. But like that's not the case, because you're always going to run into, I have my Security Plus, I'm ready to go. Let me start in SOC work. And then it doesn't cover what you need. It gives you broad overviews of like technology areas, and like there's it's a very generalist certification. There's no one size fits all for certain. So yeah, long story short to that.
It's kind of interesting because there's different trains of thought that even goes to interviewing for jobs. So if you're interviewing for a job, if you've got hiring managers that have a 4-year degree or a master's degree, a lot of cases they're gonna expect someone else to have the same or think that's the only way to do it. But as you mentioned, it's not the same way for everyone. And like my opinion, like when it comes to universities or at college, someone that's not good at self-study, that is the route they need to take. Because when you do the certification route, unless you're paying to go sit in a class like a SANS course, and it's up to you to study on your own time and figure things out on your own, it's going to be a little more difficult. So maybe those are helpful once you get that degree, but it just all really depends on your experience. If you're a self-starter, then you can do self-study and do certifications to probably get by with it. But if you need that extra help, then it may be a good idea to go the college route, more formal type of education.
Absolutely. And like as someone who went the college route, I don't really even recommend it. It's incredibly expensive. If you have the money and you can afford it, sure, go that direction. Do some research, talk to previous students and current students who went through those courses, because no matter what marketing that you see about a college course or about like the cyber program at a college, you have to have the expectation and understanding that they're going to be out of date unless it's like, one of the top 10 type that actually like employ current industry professionals as their professors in some adjunct way. The majority of them are going to be incredibly outdated. So you'll leave college with an expectation that you're going to use a lot of the knowledge that you learned over that time, but it's like knowledge for systems from the 90s and the 2000s. So you'll have some instances where it is helpful, but the majority of your day to day is not going to ever need any of that. Like, I know we spent like a whole week in my networking 101 class in my freshman year, specifically going over the nuances of hubs. I've never once needed any of that information ever since, but we spent a ton of time talking about Cisco hubs specifically.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because hubs haven't been used since like the late 90s, early 2000s. Which earlier when you talk about some of the things that you're doing at home to hack, it used to make things a lot easier if you just had a hub at home opposed to having a switch.
Yeah, absolutely. So like education wise, it's a give and take. Just do your research into the right college before jumping the gun. I think I went a route where it worked out for me timing and money wise, but I'd say in my first 3 months as a security analyst, I learned more than my entire time getting my bachelor's degrees.
Very cool. So we're getting down towards the end of the episode. Is there anything you'd like to share before we close it out?
Yeah, I really don't have any messaging. Forensics is cool. I like people wanting to do blue team work. It doesn't have the guts and glory that red teaming does and pen testing does in general. So there's not a lot of like allure to it, and your work doesn't usually get published, but it's fun. It's if you really enjoy investigations and it's like you're looking at, if you could look at like InfoSec as puzzles essentially, and that's kind of where you find your best enjoyment, you might really enjoy defensive security. It is all puzzles and proving your way to or from a hypothesis. So yeah, I guess that's my message.
Yeah, yeah. And to add to that, the defensive piece is really important because if we were all offensive security professionals, then none of the flaws would get fixed. That you got to have the defenders there. You've got to have people like you to investigate and threat hunt to be able to do. And plus, you got to also think about too on the red team side or offensive side. There's not nearly as many jobs. You don't need as nearly as many people to do the offensive security side. So that's things for people to keep in mind whenever they're trying to decide which way they want to go.
Absolutely. There's also the perfect middleman of purple teams that do exist. You can have the best of both worlds. It's typically only in very mature security organizations, so it's a lot rarer than blue or red, but there's a perfect middle ground where you get to do both, and all you do is break things and then help fix them at the same time. So if that's also your bread and butter, that's out there too.
Well, thanks for joining. It was great hearing more about your story, and it's kind of interesting because the interviewer became the interviewee. So it's kind of
Yeah,
a cool way to add to our story is, our connection. So
yeah,
thanks for
absolutely.
joining.
Thank you for having me. It's been awesome, and I'm glad to get to talk to you again.
Yeah, you're most welcome. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll have Bat's X account. So you can follow what Bat's doing in security and make sure to follow and like and subscribe to the podcast and share with your friends. One of the best ways that you can help others is to share content that you find useful, whether it's a blog post, an article, white paper, podcast, or training resource. So that's one of the best ways we can help people. So thanks for joining, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to The Philip Wylie Show. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, to learn more about Philip, go to thehackermaker.com and connect with him on LinkedIn and Twitter at Philip Wylie. Until next time.